Have you ever wanted what everyone else has? Have you ever wanted what everyone else has? It's like everyone else has X and you want it. Maybe for you, it's to finally finish school right now like everyone else. Or maybe for you, it's to get married or have kids like everyone else. Maybe for you, it's to finally feel healthy again just like everyone else. Or much simpler, maybe it's to have a nicer house or a new car or a job or status just like everyone else. If you're really, really shallow, maybe it's to simply have a full head of hair just like everyone else. Once again, have you ever wanted what everyone else has? For myself, back in elementary school, my best friend was named Jake the Snake Schluter. And let me just say, Jake was the absolute coolest. Like, Jake had railroad tracks buzzed into the side of his hair because unlike the Weber boys who went to their mother, Jake went to an actual barber. And Jake had the raddest tree fort in his backyard with all kinds of toy guns. He also, guys, you're not gonna believe this, Jake had 2 sets of shoulder pads and football helmets. Oh, right. So when we played football in his backyard, we looked like the guys on TV. He was Joe Montana and I was Ickey Woods. Again, Jake was the coolest, but the coolest part about Jake, I know this is hard to believe, Jake wore Girbaud jeans. Girbaud, however you want to say it. He wore Girbaud. And if you know Girbaud, well, then you know Girbaud. And if you don't know Girbaud, I hate to be the one that tells you this, you were either really not cool, okay? Not cool, or you were born after the year 1985, because Girbaud's were awesome, and they were expensive, and they had all kinds of leg room. You put on a pair of those bad boys, and immediately made you awesome. They also had the tag right across the zipper, which made it a little awkward, right? A little awkward. I promise I'm not staring at your crotch right now. I'm just blown away by your Girbaud. You know? And if in case you're wondering, Girbaud, believe it or not, are currently, there's a vintage pair online. By the way, when did the 80s become vintage? It was like 5-6 years ago. But right now, there's a vintage pair that you can buy online on eBay for $30. And I know this because the pair you just saw was $30 on eBay. So Jake got Girbaud in like 4th or 5th grade. I still haven't figured out how he got Girbaud. Like, were Deb and Jean selling drugs in the basement or something? Like, how did he possibly afford these things? So Jake got it, and then Tyler got it, and Matt got it, and Sean got it. And very, very quickly, it felt like everyone else had Girbaud in my class except me. I can remember begging my mother, Mom, I need Girbaud, like in the cool department. I'm not as awesome as you think I am. I need help. Mom, please, I just wanna be like everyone else. Again, have you ever wanted what everyone else has? Now, a similar question, but just a little bit different, is this. Have you ever wanted what everyone else has, even if you knew it was bad for you? Ever wanted what everyone else has, even if you knew that it was bad for you, still want it? Like, even if your parents, and get away from your parents, even if your friends warned you about it, you want it. Like, even though you knew it was not good for you at all whatsoever, you want it. Once again, have you ever wanted what everyone else has, even if you knew it was bad for you? Well, in the story that we're going to look at today and over these next few weeks, a group of people, the people of God, what they wanted was a king. They wanted a king so that they could be like everyone else. And this brings us to the name and the heart of our new series. A few months ago, the team and I were talking about future message series when someone just asked me, Adam, what are you passionate about right now? Like, what do you want to preach on? Like, what's lighting a fire inside of you? And I think they expected me to say a topic or maybe an aspect of who God is, both awesome things. And yet I said back to them, honestly, what I'm excited about right now, 1 Samuel. 1 Samuel from the Bible. Like, I've read it 3 or 4 times lately, and I feel like I can't put it down. And every stories that I've heard for a long, long time just seem to be coming alive right in front of me. And it just feels like every single chapter that I'm reading, God is speaking right to me. 1 Samuel. And so I said that, and as soon as I did, one person said back, that's it. That's it. We decided though, what if instead of just doing a series on 1 Samuel, what if we brought the entire church, along with our network churches and anyone else, through the entire book of 1 Samuel, a book of the Bible I'm guessing 90% of us or more have never read before. And so we reached out to Zondervan, who's got the rights to the NIV version of the Bible, and we said, hey, can we print these up? They gave us the approval to print a bunch of them up. And so as you leave today, you're gonna be able to get a copy as supplies last as you walk out the door. And so we printed up the NIV version of 1 Samuel, and then I went through myself and I wrote down some notes, personal things that stuck out to me. And if you're new to the Bible and reading the Bible, don't be worried. Hopefully these notes will help kind of guide you and lead you. If you've been through the Bible a whole bunch, you've read through 1 Samuel a whole bunch of times, hopefully it just turns into a conversation between myself and you. And so again, our hope is to bring all of us through the book of 1 Samuel, a book that's filled with practical insights and truths about who God is, leadership stuff. It's absolutely packed with it, but more than just reading through the book of 1 Samuel and checking a box, our hope, just like what God has been doing with me, is that these stories will come alive, that God would speak to us in a way that we've maybe never, ever been spoken to. And so we're gonna jump into 1 Samuel. And as you're gonna quickly find out, you're gonna be introduced to three main characters that show up through this book of the Bible. First off, you're gonna meet a guy named Samuel. The Bible's super original, by the way. What do we call this thing? Samuel, perfect. You're gonna meet Samuel. Then you're gonna meet a guy named Saul. And then a guy that you've maybe possibly heard about before, a guy named David. So you're gonna meet these three characters, but the truth is what this book is all about is this people, the people of God, the Israelites who are asking and wanting to have a king just like everyone else. So today we're gonna start things off by looking at a story found in chapter 8, where this guy named Samuel is nearing the end of his life. And Samuel is a prophet for the Israelites. He's like a middleman between God and his people. And so Samuel, again, is nearing the end of his life, and he decides that he's gonna appoint one of his sons to take over his position. Well, the truth is Samuel's sons are not the best of people, and they also don't follow God. And the Israelites, the people of God, they know this, and so what do? They see it as the perfect opportunity to finally ask for what they've always wanted. We know Samuel's getting old, and his sons don't follow God. This is the perfect opportunity to finally get what everyone else has. And so picking up our story, listen to what takes place. So all the elders of Israel gathered together and came to Samuel. They said to him, "You are old, and your sons do not follow your ways. Now appoint a king to lead us, such as all the other nations have. Appoint a king to lead us so that we can be like everyone else." Again, the people, they don't want a prophet. They don't want one of Samuel's kids. They don't want a middleman between them and God anymore. Instead, what they want is a king. They want a king. They want a leader that they can physically follow. They want a ruler that go physically lead them and be with them in the battle. They want a human. They want a king just like everyone else. Continuing on, listen what we find out. But when they said, "Give us a king to lead us," this displeased Samuel. So he prayed to the Lord. He went and asked God, and the Lord told him, "Listen to all the people are saying to you. It is not you they have rejected, but they have rejected me as their king." Samuel's displeased. This can more accurately translate to say he's grieving. He's grieving. And so he prays and he talks with God, and God says back to Samuel, "They're not rejecting you, they're rejecting me. They're rejecting me." You see, these people are asking for a king. They're asking and pleading for a king, but the truth is they already have a king. And who is their current king? Their current king is God. Their current king is God himself. And so God tells Samuel, they're not rejecting you. They're rejecting me. They're wanting to replace me. They don't want me anymore. And so God says this to Samuel, and then he goes on to say this. God says, listen to them. Listen to them, Samuel, but warn them solemnly and let them know what the king who will reign over them will claim as his rights. God tells Samuel to listen to the people, but God first tells Samuel that he needs to warn the people what being like everyone else really is all about. Because sometimes being like everyone else isn't all it's cracked up to be. And so he's like, we're gonna do this, but you first need to warn them about what this means. And so just listen to the warnings. It's literally 10 verses of warnings from God through Samuel to the people. God's like, you want a different king, like a king of your own? I just want to warn you of all the things this king is going to do, because this king is going to take your sons and he's going to force them to serve this king. How horrible does that sound? And he's going to take your daughters and he's going to force them to cook and bake. That's literally what it says. Men are terrible, right? And he says he's going to take your crops and your wine, and he's going to take your cattle and your donkey and your Gotland sheep. Sir, do not mess with my Gotland sheep, okay? I just had to throw that in there. But then listen to the final warning. Listen to the final thing that God through Samuel says. This is a little scary. And you yourselves will become his slaves. And when that day comes, you will cry out for relief from the king you have chosen. Whoa, but the Lord will not answer you in that day. Whew. Right? That's a lot of warning, okay? 10 verses. My sons, daughters, cattle, sheep. Oh my. Wow. Just so we hear these warnings properly, and this is so important, maybe highlight this and circle it a bunch of times. These words of warning are not coming from an angry God who wants his people to be miserable. Instead, these words of warning come from a loving father who only wants best for his children. That's who they come from. A God who is now displeased, again, more accurately, a God who is now grieving that his own sons, his own daughters, his own people have rejected him as king. And so this heavy warning is given out of love. And in case we don't know, God, he does the same exact thing with all of us. Anytime we choose something that he knows is not for our good, God, he does the same exact thing with us. He warns us anytime that we intentionally or unintentionally choose to replace him as king. Like as a loving father, God comes to us and he says, I just want to warn you. I just want to warn you, you want success at the cost of your integrity? I just want to warn you, you might get ahead for a little while and you might be able to close some deals and you might even get some promotions, but I just want to warn you, at some point it's going to catch up with you. I just want to warn you, you're looking for happiness and more stuff and a bigger house and nicer cars and more credit card debt and new and more and more. I just want to warn you, it will never be enough. It will never be enough. And you're okay flirting with this other girl even though you're a married man. I know she gives you more attention than your wife at home. Maybe think about the kids and whatever else. I know it feels good. I know you're tired of your marriage, but I just want to warn you. It will not end in a good situation. You want to have sex with your girlfriend. You want to move in with your fiance. I know that's like popular and it's like common sense. Like, why wouldn't we test drive this a little bit? But as a loving father, I just want to warn you that it's not my best. It's not my best for the both of you. You're okay gossiping about people and stabbing other people in the back. I know that you've been wronged. I know that you've been walked on, but I just want to warn you that the gossip is like a fire that starts and then it burns down an entire forest and it hurts everyone, including yourself. Get this, God, he's like, you want a life without me? You want a different king? I get it, you want to be just like everyone else. It might feel good for a while and it might even seem good for a little while, but I promise you, at some point, you yourselves will become slaves. I just want to warn you, God tells us as a loving father, not as an angry, uptight boss who's micromanaging, not as this dominant king who's got an ego trip. I'm saying this as someone who loves you more than you love yourself. I just want to warn you about all these things for your good. And so God, through Samuel, speaks these 10 verses of warnings about all the things the bad things that a king will do to them. And yet listen to what happens. Listen to this. But the people refused to listen to Samuel. No, they said, we want a king over us, then we will be like all the other nations. No, then we want a king so we can be like everyone else, with a king to lead us and to go out before us and fight our battles. Just to ask as a friend, has God ever warned you? I mean, in your soul, you just felt like God was warning you. He was speaking to you. Has God ever warned you? And yet even still, you approached God. You came near him. You looked him in the face and you said, no, God, I want it no matter what. No, God, I'm going to do it no matter what. I know you're warning me about my career and my integrity, but what you don't know, God, because you're oblivious, is I'm actually getting ahead in life. I'm finally seeing some success, and maybe I'll change my integrity thing in a little while. No, God, I want it no matter what. And I know you're telling me not to flirt with this girl. You don't know how hard it is to be married to the person that I'm married to. I'm tired of waiting for a spouse. I'm tired of waiting for you to change my spouse. No, God. I'm going to do it no matter what. And I know you've told me not to gossip, but do you realize how badly I was hurt? They stabbed me in the back. I'm going to get revenge on them. No, God, I want it no matter what. Pornography, more crap on credit cards, lying and bitterness and ugliness and crap in our private life. No, God. I'm standing up to you finally, Father. No, God, I'm going to do it no matter what. I don't want you as my king anymore. I want a different king so I can be just like everyone else. Right? Just to say it, sometimes in life, not all the time, but sometimes we start asking God, after doing our own thing, by the way, we start asking God, why did you let this happen to me? We've been doing our own thing. God, why did you let this happen to me? I thought you were a loving God. Why did you let this happen to my marriage? Like, if you're so good, like, I don't understand. Like, you're like all lovey-dovey and all this kind of stuff. Like, why did you let this happen to my career? And God says back, what? What? You're angry at me? Yeah, God, like, why didn't you do this? And like, I don't understand all the pain and heartache. Like, God's like, I tried to warn you. You didn't listen. I tried to tell you. Not because I told you so, but because I love you so. And he didn't listen. And so the people, they don't listen to God, and they say no, they want a king. And Here's the scariest part of this entire thing. Listen to this. When Samuel heard all that the people said, he repeated it before the Lord. The Lord answered, listen to them and give them a king. You catch that? Terrifying. The scary part is God doesn't force us to do what he says. Scary part, it's terrifying. He doesn't force us. He doesn't control us. He doesn't make us listen to his warning. And even scarier, if we ask long enough, sometimes God will give us exactly what we want. That's terrifying. Again, sometimes, not all the time, if we ask long enough and God warns us and we keep asking and we keep asking, even though he tells us exactly what to do and what not to do, sometimes, this is the fear of God inside of me as I say this, sometimes he will give us exactly what we ask for. When I read this story again recently, every part of me was like, Father, would you please protect me from myself? Would you please protect me in the moments that I'm asking and I'm crying out and I'm even being arrogant to you and I'm telling you you're foolish, and if I was God, I would do such a better job. Would you protect me from wanting a king like everyone else? Just to share this past year, I feel like many of us, myself included, are turning to all kinds of other kings without even knowing it. And the past 12 months has just sped everything up. Again, this looks so different for so many of us, but for some of us, it's politically. This season has been brutal, and some of us on both sides, I'm talking about both sides, have turned to another king. And we've made our candidate of choice, whoever that is, our king, the center of our universe. Others of us over the last 12 months, slowly, we have unintentionally completely walked away from God. Listen to this. Most of the church experts I follow, and whatever that means, have said that COVID has fast-forwarded post-Christianity in our country. It's like warp speed. And they say even after COVID, many people will be completely done with church and God altogether. Like people and entire families slowly turning away. Honestly, this scares me. For more than anyone, it scares me for our kids. Again, it's intentional. For so many of us, these past 12 months, we've developed new habits. And rightfully so, and yet all the while, God and church has become completely optional for us. It was a little optional to start, and then the last 12 months, it's just like fully on the table. Yeah, we can kind of take it or leave it. And here's what I know. The longer we turn to another king, the quieter God's voice becomes. Not because he's walked away from us, never. We have a God who pursues us, who seeks us out, who when we're lost comes and finds us, who when we're broken, he comes and he gathers all the pieces and he puts us back together. He's a God who shows up when everybody else walks out. They find out about your mistake, about your past. They find out about your family secret, and they're done with you. The deal's done, friendships are done. In those moments, we have a God who gets even closer to us. On our worst day, our worst moments, we have a God who seeks us out. And so God's voice doesn't get quieter because he walks away from us. It gets quieter because we walk away from him. And so the rest of the story, right? Well, just as Samuel tells his people, and just as we'll discover over the next few weeks, the people get a king. They get what they want. They get what everyone else has. And first they get a king named Saul. And then they get a king named David. And then there's a king that comes along named Solomon. And then after Solomon, there's another king. And there's another king, 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 and there's another king. And over the generations, these kings, they come and they go. These kings, they rise and they fall. And even with the best of kings, like a king named David, as we're about to find out, at some point, every single one of these kings fail. At some point, every one of these kings fail their people. That is, except one. If you were to ask most church experts and church scholars, they would tell you that on one level, the book of 1 Samuel is all about Saul and Samuel and David. That's one level. On a completely other level, 1 Samuel is actually not about any of them at all. It's actually not about Saul and even David. The book of 1 Samuel is actually not about David. Who is 1 Samuel all about? It's about this king that is coming. It's about this king that is coming. A king that wore a crown of thorns. A king that wore a purple robe. A king that instead of climbing up on a throne, he began to climb up on a cross for you and I. A king that died like all the other kings died. And yet he was a king that rose unlike any other king rose. And this king, he didn't fail. Instead, he was perfect. He was perfect. And this king, instead of bringing people away from God, he brought them closer to them. And this king, instead of turning sons and daughters into slaves, this king turned slaves into sons and daughters. Thank God. Other kings, I just want to warn you about other kings. They take and they take and they take and they take and they take. And this king, he absolutely takes things away. What does he take away? He takes away our shame. He takes away our guilt. He takes away our crap. He takes away our secrets that no one knows about except us, that we hear about every single day from ourselves. He takes away our sin and he removes it from us as far as the east is from the west. It's not that we shouldn't have a king. God just says there's only one that will satisfy. This king's name is Jesus. Jesus. Last question for all of us, myself included today, is Jesus your king? Is Jesus your king? I'm not talking about 20 years ago when you prayed, or 20 years ago when you were at college, or last week when whatever. I'm talking about right now today. Is Jesus your king? Is he in charge? Does he call the shots? Is he actually the king, or are you the one that's quick to say, no, God, I'm gonna do it no matter what? Is he the ruler of your life? A ruler that is perfect, that is full of love and grace and mercy. Is Jesus your king? If the answer is no, or you're not sure what the answer is, how do we start? Well, the Israelites, the people of God, they just said no, 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 no. How does it start? It just starts by saying yes. Yes, Jesus, I want you to be my king. Yes, in my relationships, I want you to be my king. Yes, in my business deals at work, in my career, I want you to be my king. In my private life, I want you to be my king. On Friday nights, I want you to be my king. On Monday mornings and Sunday mornings, I want you to be my king. I want you to be in charge of everything. And in any time that you and I disagree, God, it's always the default is to you. You get to call the shots. My vote means nothing. Yes, yes, yes. Is Jesus your king? God says this king is the King of Kings. He's the king we've always wanted. He's the king we've always needed. Let's pray. Gracious Father, Heavenly King, we come before you thankful for who you are. Thankful that you're a God who's not a dictator, who's not an uptight boss that's unpredictable, who's unstable. God, instead, you are a loving Father who is constant and forever the same. And God, as we open up this book called 1 Samuel, it's easy to get confused. I can remember reading through it the first time as a freshman in college, and I didn't understand half of what was being said to us. But God, would you just speak to us in a way? I pray you'd speak somehow through this message today, and it would just continue to speak. And as we open up 1 Samuel ourselves, when we go back home or later today or tomorrow morning, that you would just speak to us. We're simple, God. I know for me, I feel like I don't know much of anything, so we just speak in a way that we can understand. But more than anything, my hope and my prayer for anybody who's hearing my voice right now, just in your own soul, to start saying yes. Jesus, yes. Jesus, yes. This isn't working with me in control. The answer is yes. God, yes. Would you help me to follow you? Yes. God, I surrender to you. Yes. Jesus, I want you as my King. Yes. Lord, we love you. We thank you. We pray all these things in the name of the greatest King of all kings, the name Jesus. All God's people said, amen.
Hey everyone, it's Adam from Embrace. If you enjoyed today's message, make sure to subscribe to Embrace's YouTube channel to stay updated. You can also click here to check out other videos. Thanks for watching.